Welcome to Psalm Sunday. Did you know there was such a thing? I think I made it up, but you're here nonetheless. Maybe you'll linger and join me as we look at Psalm 4 this Sunday afternoon. Join me as we dissect it out and get into David's world. What have you been doing for the last 6 months? There's been a pandemic. Yeah, newsflash, you knew that. I think about 6 months ago when it started, it was almost like an adventure, like a snow day, kind of different, exciting. Let's get together with the family, have game night, pop popcorn. I don't know. And I'm not sure when it happened. Was it the second month in, the fourth month, fifth month? Suddenly it got a little old. Did despair raise its ugly little head at any point? Well, perhaps it did. In David's life, in Psalm 4, despair, yeah, it was like one of those gophers in the arcade, and you take that mallet and you beat it down and whop it, and it just pops up somewhere else. Despair. It can be that way. So we're going to look at despair. Our daughter, Jennifer, has a friend, Leah, who's a counselor, therapist of some sort, and they have lunch occasionally. And Jennifer will talk to her about people who come to her with problems or issues or situations, and we want to give good counsel, and how do we do that, and what do we say? And this was probably a year ago, and Jennifer was telling me about it, and it really resonated with me because it's a very thought-provoking question. Leah said that when someone came to her that, and you kind of unload your issue, your problem, and she would say, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?" People bring problems. We can't fix them. It really isn't in our bag of tricks. We can't just, okay, go in peace. It is done for you. Yeah, we ain't got that kind of power. We might wish we did. But what do you want me to do for you? And I think sometimes as we come to God with our despair, what do we want Him to do? What do we want Him to do? In pandemic, did we want our life back? Do we want our life back? 2020, the year 2020, it's referred to originally, before we got into it good, the year of vision. The year of vision. What have we seen in 2020? We may have seen that maybe life, the way we were living it, we weren't doing it real good anyway. Maybe we don't exactly want life back exactly like we had it. What do you want me to do? Well, David came to God with his stuff, and we are pretty good at defining the problem. But what are we looking for? Let's ponder this as we work our way through Psalm 4. David thought he wanted relief, and maybe that's what we think we're looking for too. Verse 1, answer me when I call. Oh yeah. We cry out to God. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. David wants relief, and we do too. Whatever it is that's crowding around us, we want relief from it. And we might try, actually, a lot of different avenues before we bring it to God. We may unload on a friend. We might Google it. I'm going to educate myself and get armed with information so I know how to handle this. We might, armed with that information, do more, try harder, kind of working it out in our own minds. Sometimes we busy ourselves with distractions. You know, there were a lot of pandemic distractions. There were the three C's: cooking, cleaning, and crafting. Maybe you tried all three at different points during this 6 month season and counting. Maybe Amazon.com became your new best friend, shopping, gardening. There have been a lot of things we could distract ourselves with, but we wake up the next morning and it's the proverbial movie Groundhog Day. Here we go again. Here we go again. What is it that we want? What is it that we're looking for? We may think it's relief, but is it really? I was looking up the definition of relief, and when I read you the definition, you may say, yeah, it's exactly what I'm looking for. You have nailed it. Relief, the feeling that comes when something burdensome is removed or reduced. Yeah, out of here. We want it out of here. The condition of being comfortable or relieved. Someone who takes the place of another, as when things get dangerous or difficult, like a stand-in, a substitute, a backup, a fill-in, a reliever. Oh, we wish there were somebody who would take this on for us. The act of reducing something unpleasant. A pause for relaxation, respite, rest period. That's those distractions, but yeah, there it is. You just got to still think about it. Well, I'm happy to report that David did find it. He did find it. I want to give you the spoiler alert in verse 8. I love a spoiler alert. If I don't want excitement and intrigue, I want to know it ends well. Even in Scripture, I want to know it ends well. I love Revelation. It ends well. But when we look at Psalm 4, he starts out, despair, verse 1. Verse 8, in peace I will both lie down and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. He arrived at that place, despair, but at verse 8, the place where he could not only lie down, but he could sleep. Sometimes, we lay down, but we can't sleep, sleeplessness, because of the despair. But to get to that place where we can have true rest, and he tells us, you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. Well, I think there's a lesson for us in how David got from verse 1 to verse 8. What happens in the middle? How did he arrive at this place? And let's dissect it out, because we want to arrive there too. Okay, we get a glimpse of his problem in verse 2. For him, his problem, his honor is at stake, and he's being lied about. Now, don't zone out, tune me out, thinking, well, that ain't my problem. Well, I think generically speaking, it's going to be a little more identifiable for us as well as we dissect it out. Verse 2, oh man. Yeah, there it is. Oh man. People, generically speaking, people can be our problem. Oh man, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Selah. People may not be taking our honor, and they may not be telling lies about us. They may be trying to control us. They may be trying to tell us what we can do and what we can't do. That might be the issue. People may be hurting our feelings. People may not be valuing us or giving us respect. People can be our problem. Or perhaps our distress is circumstances. Maybe it's not people per se, but it's circumstances. Ours is a fallen, broken world. There are accidents, there is illness, there is disease, there is aging, there is concern over loved ones. Maybe our lives tracking along, but we have loved ones and their lives a mess and they're making poor choices. And there's the consequences of poor choices, and we're having to live with those consequences, and we can't fix, there we go again, people. Lots of issues can cause despair and they can cause distress. But let's continue on looking at David's world. What's he going to do about this? Here's the problem, verse 2, but what's he going to do about this? He poses the age-old question, how long? How long? We could tend to think, well, I can take anything for a little while if I think it's not going to be long term. How long? But then we see in verse 3 what happens. He goes from, here's my problem, verse 3, David speaks truth to himself. But know this, here's my problem, but know this, and he spells out that truth that he himself needs to remember. This is good counsel for us. We can get caught up in the here's my problem and despair, but to speak truth, to come in and diffuse the problem itself. Verse 3, but know this, but know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. What's David saying here? I am God's own, and he hears. Okay, now armed with that truth, here's his problem, but armed with that truth, David now begins to give himself good, tremendous counsel. And we too are the benefactors of that as we study this, as we get together and we study the counsel of the Word. Here's what he speaks to himself, his own counsel to himself. Verse 4, be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts, on your own beds, and be silent. Selah. Verse 5, offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. Okay, two things. The first one, keep your mouth shut, get off by yourself, and ponder it out in your own heart with God. That's basically what he is saying. Be angry, do not sin, ponder in your own hearts, on your beds, and be silent. We just spews out of our mouth. It just, the anger and just, be angry, do not sin, get off by yourself. Talk to God about it. It reminds me of James 1, 19 and 20, where James says to the brethren, know this, here again, talk to yourself, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be not quick to speak, quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. If you're listening and not just, then the anger, it's just like doing math. It just comes out that way. It comes out that way when you get the order right. Verse 20, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So, be angry, do not sin, ponder in your own hearts on your beds, and be silent. The second thing, trust and obey. The old proverbial song, trust and obey. There's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And that's what we get from David in Psalm 4. Obedience, he refers to it as right sacrifices. In the Old Testament, that was how they obeyed. They had these sacrifices and they would give those to God in obedience. He's giving us a picture of obedience and trust. We do the right thing. Get control of your emotions. Be angry, don't sin, get off and talk with God about it, and then do the right thing. Obey. Do what you know to do. How are we going to know what to do? We're going to be in this guy, be in the Word, and know what God has said, and do it. Be obedient. Trust Him with the outcome. Trust Him with the outcome. We obey. Isaiah 26:3 has become a favorite verse of mine during the pandemic. This way of how do you have peace in a world run amok? Isaiah 26:3. You, God, you keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Why is my mind stayed on God? Because I'm trusting Him. Here again, obey, trust. It just all fits together like a puzzle. Prayer is a bit of a dance as we continue with David in his prayer in Psalm 4. It's a bit of a dance. We cry out, we speak these raw emotions, and then we settle down and we begin to speak truth to ourselves. And along the way, we can find ourselves even becoming somewhat of a counselor ourselves, somewhat of a philosopher. David did. The word philosopher means a wise person, calm and rational, who lives a life of reason, good sense, and sound judgment. And this is what we're going to see in David. In verse 6 and 7, David gives an assessment of life in verse 6. But he doesn't just throw up his hands and say, life's a mess and people are crazy. Let's throw it in the refuse bin. No, that's not the approach he takes. He gives the assessment of life, but then he counters it with truth. Let's look at it. In verse 6, he says, there are many who will say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. That is David's, okay, life's a mess and people are crazy statement. David is saying here that there are many, you're going to see it everywhere you go. There are many who will say, show me. Lord, you're just going to have to show me. Show me some good. You bless me. And then I'm on board with you. There's going to be many who have that perspective. And maybe we've been guilty of being that person, being a part of that many. Ours is a world that can tend to seek God for His blessing. But then David says, yeah, there's many with that. That's that assessment of our world. But verse 7, he counters it. You have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound. David is saying, good times aren't real joy. Only you, Lord, are joy. Let that sink in. We're wanting our life back. Good times. Good times are not really joy. Only you, Lord, are joy. And then we have arrived. Verse 8, the big finish, the end result. And this is what a life can look like. We come back to what David said. No matter dealing with people, no, it's up to God to fix people. Dealing with circumstances, we trust God with that. We arrive at verse 8, in peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. David went into this wanting relief. It may start there. But as we come to God and we just pour out our hearts to Him, what we find often is that we get a whole lot more than we perhaps even knew that we wanted. God works in our heart and in our mind to bring us to see that what we really want is Him, you alone. Even in Jesus' teaching in the New Testament, you've got instances where in Matthew 20, 29 through 34, you had two blind men come to Him, and Jesus asked them, what do you want me to do for you? That's That's what he asked them. When James and John came to Jesus in Mark 10:35 through 45, they're pondering, sitting on his right hand or sitting on his left. And Jesus said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They thought they wanted honor. Jesus was looking for servants. Sometimes God reroutes what we think we want. What we think we want. And as we close, reflecting back on David's world in Psalm 4, there's such beauty and hope for us in this psalm. It shows us that our circumstances don't even have to change, which is good because often they don't. We're coming in 6 months now. Sometimes they don't. But even in our fallen, broken world, when circumstances don't change, we can change. We can change. We can shift our focus upward to God Himself. And the end result of that, we come to trust Him. We come to trust Him. We come to obey Him. And we may just become a good counselor to others, just like David has become to us as we've studied this together. Just like Leah to Jennifer, we can be that voice of good counsel to others. And at the end of the day, we rest in peace in Him, in Him. So, on this Psalm Sunday, pandemic blessings to you. Did you know, I found this fascinating. I wished I'd quit doing that. I glance up at myself and I think, I look like I have Amazon hands. Pandemic blessings. Did you know that pandemic means existing everywhere? Existing everywhere. We're focusing on disease everywhere when we think pandemic in our culture today. But think pandemic blessing. Let's let the blessing of God Himself in us be our proclamation. And let's send it out everywhere. Big hands. Big hands. We want big hands sending out pandemic blessings.